Chapter 1. The Crystal in the Depths. Chapter 1. The Crystal in the Depths. The sun stood high above the village. Smoke curled from chimneys while children ran between the small stone houses, and men and women tended to their fields. In the middle of it all stood Steve. His hands were rough and covered in dust as he laid the last wooden beams for a new house that would become home to a young family. The sound of hammering tools blended with the laughter of children. "Steve!" a familiar voice called. He looked up, and there came Alex walking. Her red hair caught the sunlight, and her green tunic was dusty from the day's work. She stopped in front of him with a small smile. "How's the building going?" she asked curiously. Steve wiped his forehead and smiled. "It's going well. We just need more stone for the foundation. Could you fetch some from the cave?" Alex's smile grew wider. "Of course, I'll take care of it." She grabbed her pickaxe and set off toward the dark cave at the edge of the village. Inside the tunnels, the air was cool, and the light from her torch cast long shadows on the walls. She had been here many times before, but as she ventured deeper, she discovered an area she had never seen. The stone walls shimmered faintly, as if something hid behind them. Alex raised her pickaxe and began to strike. Stone after stone broke loose, and then, suddenly, a glint. Clang. She froze and stared. Embedded in the wall was a crystal, smaller than her palm, but shining in colours she had never seen in Minecraft's world. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heart. Carefully, she chipped it free. As she lifted it up, a warmth spread through her fingers, as though the crystal itself was alive. "This isn't normal," she whispered to herself. With the crystal in her hand, she turned back. Her steps quickened, her heartbeat racing. She had to show Steve, and maybe the whole village, what she had found. Chapter 2. The Hidden Power. Alex stepped out of the darkness of the caves and into the busy village once again. The sunlight felt sharper, almost stronger, as she squeezed the crystal in her hand. She could still feel its warmth, almost as if it was beating in sync with her own heart. "Alex!" called a bright voice. She turned and saw Anna, her close friend, running over. Anna carried a basket of bread, her long braid bouncing as she smiled in greeting. "You're back." "Did you find the stones for the building?" she asked, but her eyes were quickly drawn to the crystal. "No, not exactly, but I found this." Alex held out her hand. Anna leaned in, her eyes growing wide. "Wow, it's beautiful, but what is it? I've never seen anything like it before." Alex shrugged. "I don't know. It feels alive." Anna was about to answer, but suddenly stopped and stared at her. Her smile faded, replaced by confusion. "Alex, wait a second. Is it just me, or do you look taller?" Alex blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" She looked down at herself. Something felt strange. The ground seemed farther away, and her point of view was slowly changing. "Steve, come over here!" Anna called out, panicked. Steve, who was still at the construction site, came walking over quickly. When he reached them, he nearly dropped his hammer in shock. "Alex, you're growing!" Villagers began to gather, whispering and pointing. Alex's body stretched, centimetre by centimetre, her hands shaking as she tried to let go of the crystal. "Drop it! Drop it now!" Anna shouted. Alex threw the crystal to the ground. Crash! But it was too late. The magic had already taken hold of her. Her feet pressed deeply into the earth, her shadow growing and covering them all. Grow. Grow. She could feel it in every muscle, every fibre of her body. She was growing, unstoppably, until her head towered far above the rooftops. The villagers looked like tiny dolls below her, some with fear in their eyes, others with pure astonishment. When the transformation finally stopped, Alex stood, 20 feet tall. Her clothes had miraculously stretched with her, as if the crystal had thought of everything. She looked down at Steve, Anna, and the others, her breathing heavy and uneven. I don't know what's happening to me, she said, her voice deeper, echoing across the square. People around her stepped back, nervous. For the first time in Minecraft's history, a giant stood in the middle of the village. And it was Alex. Chapter 3: The Crystal's Fate. The silence was almost unbearable. The entire village stood gathered in the square. Men, women, and children. All eyes turned upward to the new giant, Alex. She kept her arms close to her body, her cheeks red with nerves. I swear I didn't do anything. I just found the crystal, she said hesitantly. Voices began to murmur through the crowd. She's enormous. Is it a curse? Or a gift from the gods? Anna bit her lip and looked down at the crystal, still glowing on the ground. She stepped forward. What if we just take it? Maybe we can... No, wait! Steve grabbed her arm, his expression serious. What if it does the same thing to you? Or something even worse. A few children hid behind their mothers, while an old man, the village elder, slowly stepped forward. He leaned on his cane, but his eyes sparkled with both fear and a hint of humour. We can't just leave it there, he grumbled. Chapter 4: A Place for the Night. After many attempts, laughter, and nervous gasps, the villagers finally managed to push the crystal into a crate. The old man looked extremely pleased as he slammed the lid shut with a loud bang. There! Now let's not open it again, unless someone wants to be tall enough to clean the roof, he said, winking, which made several people laugh despite the seriousness of the situation. But the crystal still glowed. A faint, pulsing light seeped out from the cracks in the crate. People cast worried glances at it, but no one dared to get closer. One problem remained: Alex. She sat carefully on the edge of the square, her huge shadow covering several houses. She folded her hands and looked down, clearly embarrassed. I can't sleep in my house anymore, she said quietly, her voice rumbling low through the village. Steve stepped forward, looking up at her with a warm, slightly shy smile. Well, maybe you could sleep outside. There's space next to my house. I mean, I'd feel safe having you close by. Alex raised her eyebrows in surprise. Her cheeks warmed, but she nodded. Thank you, Steve. I'd really like that. Anna glanced at the two of them and smiled softly, as if she understood something they themselves did not yet realize. Soon the villagers started bringing food, baskets of bread, meat, vegetables, whatever they could find. A group of children even dragged over a whole barrel of milk, which nearly toppled over. Alex accepted everything with careful hands, as if afraid she might crush it all. Thank you, everyone, she said gently. When night fell, Alex lay on a grassy field beside Steve's house. She pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around herself, and gazed at the stars. Steve sat on his porch, and their eyes met several times. A little too long, a little too nervously, but neither said a word. All throughout the village there was a feeling of both fear and hope. Tomorrow, they would have to figure out what the crystal truly meant. But for now, there was peace. Chapter 5. Secrets of the Night-Night lay quietly over the village. Only the faint sounds of cicadas and the wind whispering through the fields broke the silence. Steve was still sitting on the porch, while Alex lay stretched out on the meadow beside his house. She turned her head toward him, her eyes shimmering in the moonlight. Everything feels so strange, Steve, I was just myself this morning. And now... She looked down at her enormous hands, hands that could lift entire wagons like toys. Now everyone looks at me as something different. Maybe even dangerous. Her voice broke, and tears began to stream down her cheeks. Steve didn't hesitate. He got up, walked down the steps, and went to her side. He placed a hand on her giant finger, a small gesture, but filled with warmth. Alex, you're still you. You're still the one who helps the village, who always smiles even when things are tough. No crystal can change that. She sniffled and looked at him with red, tear-filled eyes. Do you really think so? I know it, he said softly. She closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and when she opened them again, she looked at him with a faint, almost shy smile. Steve, would you maybe sleep here with me tonight? I wouldn't feel so alone if you were here. His heart beat faster, but he nodded without hesitation. Of course. He grabbed a blanket, climbed up onto her arm, and lay down by her shoulder. She breathed deeply but calmly as she slowly drifted off to sleep. Soon he followed, and they both slept deeply under the quiet light of the stars. But not everyone found peace that night. In her small house, Anna sat by the window. She stared out at the meadow, where her best friend lay as a giant figure beside Steve. Her hands shook as she clutched her blanket. That could have been me, she thought, afraid of herself. I could have been the one to protect the village, the one who could see the world from above, the one people would admire. She squeezed her eyes shut, a flame of anger burning beneath her skin. But why her? Why not me? She whispered. Then she shook her head, pressing her hands against her temples. No, stop it, Anna. She's your best friend. You mustn't think like that. At last, she lay down in bed, but sleep came slowly, restlessly. Deep inside her dreams, a new feeling, jealousy, wrestled with her friendship, and the night became longer than ever. Chapter 6. Morning Sun and New Plans. The sounds of animals waking filled the air. Chickens clucked, cows mooed, and farther away came the familiar crackle of zombies burning in the sun before collapsing into dust. The village stirred, doors opened, and people stepped outside to begin their daily work. Alex blinked sleepily, stretched, and felt the cool dew on her skin. She looked down and saw Steve, still sleeping soundly, curled up against her shoulder. A little, unexpected blush spread across her cheeks. She smiled softly. He really stayed with me all night. Gently, she touched him with a fingertip, and he started to mumble and wake up. Good morning, he said, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Good morning, Steve. Alex replied quietly, her voice still deep and resonant, but full of warmth. He slowly got up, stretched, and Alex carefully helped him down to the ground with her hand, as if he were something fragile. She couldn't help but smile at how small his feet looked when they touched the grass. Soon, the whole village was gathered. Some of the wisest men and women, who had old books hidden in their houses, were set to investigate the situation. They flipped through worn pages, pored over notes from past discoveries, and tried to find any mention of crystals with mysterious powers. If there's one that can make people bigger, murmured a learned woman as she flipped through a book. Maybe there's one that can do the opposite. Everyone nodded, but it was clear the research would take time. So what about Alex? She sat a little away from the others, so her enormous body wouldn't get in the way. She looked down at her hands and thought. She wanted to help. But how? A group of children suddenly came up to her. They brought bread, toys, a little wooden ball. Will you play with us, Alex? They asked, unafraid. She blinked in surprise, then smiled. Maybe, but I'll have to be very careful. So, while the adults dug through books and theories, Alex found her own role for the day, looking after the village, playing with the children, helping with heavy tasks like lifting wood and stone, things no one else could do. For the first time since she had grown, she felt that maybe she could still be useful, even as a giant. Chapter 7. Shadows in the Heart. The sun was high in the sky, and the village buzzed with life. The men worked in the fields, the women baked bread and cared for the children, and in the midst of it all moved Alex, far taller than anyone else, but with a gentle smile that reassured most. She carried large beams for the construction that Steve had struggled with the day before. For her, it was like lifting small toys. She set them in place while the children clapped and cheered. "She's stronger than 10 men," shouted one of the boys, his eyes shining. Alex laughed softly, but quickly looked away, afraid her voice might be too loud. "I'm just trying to help," she said gently, crouching down so she could meet the children's eyes more closely. Later in the day, she helped carry barrels of water from the well, gathered hay, and lifted stones far too heavy for anyone else. Everywhere she went, she was followed by admiring glances, careful smiles, and whispering voices. But not everyone was smiling. Anna stood a little apart, her hands tightly folded in front of her. She watched Alex, her enormous figure, the red hair glinting in the sun, the strong arms that could lift whole loads without effort. Inside there was a sting, small at first, but growing. She looked so perfect. She's strong, admired. Everyone looks at her. Everyone looks up to her. Anna forced herself to smile whenever Alex glanced her way, but she could feel something tightening in her chest. Again and again she withdrew from the others, sitting behind a house or by the fence at the edge of the fields where no one could see her. She buried her face in her hands and whispered to herself, "Stop it. She's your best friend." It's not her fault. She didn't even want to be like this. She just wants to be normal again. She took a deep breath, trying to let the feeling go. But when she stood up and went back, the stings returned. Every time Alex smiled at a villager, every time Steve looked at her with that warm expression, the jealousy grew like a shadow. As the afternoon faded, Alex sat in the meadow to rest. She laughed with some children who had made small flower crowns and were now trying to put them in her hair. Anna stood farther away and watched the scene. She doesn't even like it, Anna thought. She's embarrassed, she's scared. She feels trapped in a body she can't control. And here I am, wishing to be her. She closed her eyes and felt it burn in her stomach. The longing. The dream of being giant, of being able to protect the village, of seeing the world from above, free from fear. Her gaze drifted unwillingly toward the house where the crate with the crystal was locked away. She bit her lip. What if... The thought coiled in her mind like a snake. What if I took it? Just to try. Just for a moment. She shook her head hard, as if to chase it away. No! That would be stupid, crazy. I mustn't even think it, she whispered sharply. But the thought didn't leave. It stayed, lodged deep in her mind like a splinter she couldn't pull out. She turned and went home, but all evening and into the night it was there. The crystal, the possibility, the dream. And she knew she couldn't keep it out forever. Chapter 8. The Theft of the Night. The moon stood high over the village. Every house was dark, only the faint lights from torches flickered at the gates. Inside her house, Anna lay awake, staring up at the ceiling. Her thoughts had kept her captive all night. Alex's smile, the admiration of the people, and the glowing box with the crystal. She sat up, heart pounding. I mustn't. But if I just... Before she knew it, she had thrown a cloak around her shoulders and slipped out into the night. Her footsteps were silent on the ground. She knew every stone in the village. Soon she stood before the house where the box was hidden. She gently pushed the door open. Inside the darkness, there it was. The box, glowing faintly between the cracks, as if the crystal was calling to her. She moved closer, her hands trembling, but still she wrapped her fingers around the rough wood. "Why does it feel like you belong to me?" she whispered. She lifted it, surprised it wasn't heavier. Her legs shook, but she carried it all the way home, hidden in the silence of the night. When she reached her house, she set the box on her bed. She stood for a long time, staring at it, her chest rising and falling quickly, as if she had been running. I could open it. I could take the crystal. I could become like her. Maybe bigger, maybe stronger. But then she thought of Alex's face, of how her friend had cried, how nervous she was about all that was new. She thought of Steve, of how he had looked at Alex, but also at her when she was in need. She sank onto the bed and hid the box beneath her blanket. No, I can't. Not now. Not in front of everyone. Not in front of her. Tears welled up. She lay down, clutching the blanket around herself, and cried quietly until sleep finally pulled her into darkness. The next morning, roosters woke the village, and the sun rose behind the mountains. People started working again. Children ran laughing through the streets, and the sound of tools and laughter filled the air. Anna stepped out of her house. Her eyes were red, and she moved slowly, but she forced a smile. "Anna?" called a voice. Steve came over, lifting a hand in greeting. As he got closer, he immediately saw that something was wrong. "Are you okay? You look a little strange. Are you sick?" She shook her head quickly. No, I just didn't sleep well. But everything's okay." He looked at her for a moment, seriously, but let it go. Instead, he smiled gently. "If you need anything, Anna, you know I'm always here for you." Her heart tightened, but she smiled back, weak but genuine. "Thank you, Steve." He walked on, and she watched him. Her smile grew wider for a moment, then she heard laughter behind her. She turned her head. There, in the meadow, sat Alex. She laughed as a group of children ran around her, tossing little flower crowns into her hair. Her huge hands picked them up, and her eyes sparkled with warmth. A sharp pain cut through Anna. The ache returned, stronger than ever. Why her? Why not me? She looked down at her hands, clenched them into fists. She tried to ignore the thought, but deep inside she knew it wouldn't go away. Not as long as the crystal lay hidden beneath her bed. Chapter 9. When the wish breaks free. All morning, Anna had been struggling with herself. She tried to smile, tried to take part in the daily life of the village. But every time she saw Alex sitting with the children, or helping to lift wood and stone, the unrest inside her grew. The voice she had tried to silence only got stronger. It could have been me. It should have been me. She went back to her house, slammed the door behind her, and stood for a long time in silence. The box was still there under the bed, glowing, as if it was waiting for her. "I can't take this anymore," she whispered, tears in her eyes, but her voice trembling with anger. "I don't want to stand in the shadows. I don't want to be the little friend who just watches." She pulled out the box, threw open the lid, and the crystal lit up the room with a warm, pulsing glow. Anna took it in her hands, feeling the warmth flood her body, this time stronger, more intense. She gasped, her lips curling into an almost satisfied smile. Finally. It started slowly. A pressure in her chest, a tingling in her skin. Then the growth began. Her hands stretched first, fingers growing longer, stronger. Her legs pressed against the floor, feet expanding until they cracked the wooden planks. The walls seemed to shrink, the ceiling lowered, and her head hit the beams above. Ah! A faint moan escaped her lips, mixed with pain and pleasure. Her body stretched, muscles tensed, and soon the house began to groan under the pressure. Craack. The boards gave way. The ceiling broke apart in a cloud of dust and splinters, while Anna, still growing, forced herself free. Outside in the square, one of the elder villagers was looking into the house where the crystal had been kept. He turned, pale-faced, toward Steve and shouted, "The box! It's gone!" Steve froze, his heart pounding. Who could have taken it? Before anyone could answer, a deep rumbling sound echoed down the street, a moan that made the ground tremble. The house shook, the walls bulged outward, and then, with a deafening crash, it exploded apart. Splinters and stones rained down as an enormous figure slowly rose from the ruins. Anna. She was on her knees at first, her hands planted in the earth as her body kept growing. She gasped for breath, her cheeks flushed, as if both shaken and intoxicated by the power flowing through her. Her house lay shattered around her, but she brushed the rubble aside with a snort, as if it was nothing but pebbles. The crystal slipped from her hand, landing in the dirt in front of her and glowing faintly in the dust. When the growth finally stopped, she stood up, 20 feet tall, just like Alex. A silence fell over the village. People stared in disbelief. Some screamed and ran, others stood frozen in shock. Steve felt his blood run cold. "Anna, no," he whispered as he watched his childhood friend, now a giant, standing among the ruins of her own home. Anna lifted her head, her eyes sparkling with something that was both fear and euphoria. She looked down at her hands, stretched them out, feeling the strength pulsing through her body. A slow smile spread across her lips. I can feel it," she said softly, but her voice echoed through the entire village. This is how it's supposed to be." And even though her heart pounded with confusion, she couldn't hide it. She enjoyed it. Chapter 10. The Truth of the Dream. Anna stood in the middle of the square, 20 feet tall, surrounded by the rubble of her own house. Her breaths were heavy, but her eyes shone. She looked around, over the rooftops, over the fields, all the way to the edge of the forest. For the first time in her life, she felt powerful. She reached down, picked up a wagon from the ground, one that usually took 2 strong men to move, and lifted it with one hand. She laughed out loud, a laugh filled with both childish joy and euphoria. "So easy. It feels so easy," she cried, and her laughter echoed throughout the village. More villagers gathered, but they kept their distance. Whispered voices spread. First Alex, and now her? Are we cursed? What's happening to our village? Steve stepped forward through the crowd, his gaze locked on Anna. His jaw was tense, hands clenched. He walked right up, stopping at her enormous feet. "Anna!" he shouted, his voice edged with anger. "What in the world were you thinking?" She looked down at him, and in that moment her smile changed. The soft laughter was replaced by a nervous, shy expression. She blushed deeply, almost like a child caught in a secret. "Steve, He shook his head. No excuses. You have to say it. The whole truth. What made you do this?" Silence fell over the village. Even the children stopped whispering. All eyes were on Anna. She clasped her hands in front of her, her shoulders drooping, and for the first time her voice was more a whisper than an echo. It's My dream. A murmur ran through the crowd, but Steve kept his eyes on her. She continued, her voice growing stronger, as if she was forcing the words from her heart. Ever since I was a child, I've dreamed of this, of being big, of being able to protect the village, of seeing the world in a new way, free from fear. I always tried to push the thoughts away, but they wouldn't leave. And when I saw Alex, when I saw her grow, I couldn't stop thinking about what it would be like if it were me. She paused, her voice trembling, tears starting to gather in her eyes. I tried to fight it. I swear, Steve, I tried. I told myself it was stupid, that I couldn't. But it was too hard. It was like the crystal was calling to me. I had to do it. Now she looked directly down at him, her gaze more serious than ever before. I promise I would never hurt any of you. I would never hurt you. I know I did something foolish, but I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to experience it, just once. The silence that followed was heavy as stone. The villagers stared at her, some with fear, some with pity. Steve stood very still, his gaze sharp, but in his eyes there was something else too. Sorrow. He took a deep breath, and when he finally spoke, his voice was gentler than angry. Anna, you should have trusted us. Trusted me, not the crystal. She looked away, her enormous shoulders shaking, as if she was about to break apart, caught between the joy of her dream and the pain of having betrayed those she loved. Chapter 11. 2 giants, 1 shadow. Anna. The voice behind her was gentle, but strong enough to cut through the noise in Anna's head. Anna froze and slowly turned. Behind her stood Alex. She too towered above the rooftops, a figure 20 feet tall, her red hair caught by the sunlight. Alex had been there all along. She had listened. She had seen everything. I heard what you said, Alex said softly, her large eyes warm and kind. And I just want you to know, you're still my best friend. Nothing can change that. The words struck Anna like both a blow and a gift. Tears welled up, her lips trembled. She took a deep breath, and then, without hesitation, she stepped forward. They now stood face to face, 2 giants high above everyone's heads. And without a word, Alex opened her enormous arms. Anna accepted, and they fell into an embrace. It was an incredible sight. 2 colossal figures, in the heart of the village, holding each other. The villagers looked up at them, some with relief, others with fear, but all with a sense that something special was happening. I thought you would hate me, Anna whispered, her voice still echoing over the square. Alex shook her head, a tear in her eye. Never. I understand you more than you think. For a brief moment, it felt as if everything could be healed. But then the mood shifted. Alex's gaze drifted past Anna, out to the edge of the forest. She tensed, her grip on Anna tightening. Anna. Out there. Anna turned quickly, her giant body moving so slowly the earth shook beneath her feet. And she saw it too. At first, just a few dark shapes among the trees, then hundreds, eyes glinting green and red in the shadows. Moans, rattling, clicks, roars. The whole forest's edge seemed to move, as if the night itself was marching forward. An army. Zombies, skeletons, spiders, creepers, and other monsters from Minecraft's darkest corners. All gathered, more than any village had ever seen. They're coming, Alex said sharply, her voice like thunder. In the square, Steve instantly grabbed his sword. His gaze was steady, but worry was clear in his eyes. Behind him, the village warriors armed themselves, bows, axes, iron spears. They lined up before the gates, determined but nervous. So many, whispered one of the men. Steve quickly looked up at the two giants. Alex! Anna, we need you. Without you, we're lost. The two friends exchanged a look. Alex's eyes were heavy. She still carried the unease of her size, but she nodded. Anna, however, let her gaze sweep over the village, the people, the sky. She still felt it, the strength, the freedom, the euphoria. I like it, she whispered, only loud enough for Alex to hear. Alex didn't reply, but looked ahead at the army, now approaching in the dust from the forest's edge. They both knew the battle was coming, and that it would demand more than either of them had ever imagined. Chapter 12. The law of the sun is broken. The elders of the village stood close together at the gate, their eyes wide with shock. It makes no sense, one of them said, his voice trembling. They should be burning. The sun is high, but they're not burning. Another, an old man with a cane, nodded frantically. It must be magic, dark magic protecting them. Someone, or something, has sent this army. His words sent chills through the villagers. If even the light of the sun could no longer protect them, what could? Steve stood at the front with his sword raised. His gaze was sharp, but underneath doubt simmered. He looked at the other warriors, young men and women fumbling with bows and axes. There's no time to think about it. Protect the village, he shouted. And as one, they rushed toward the gates, ready to face the impossible. The ground began to shake. Not just from the monster's march, but from the two giants stepping forward behind the village walls. Alex came first, her steps heavy, her gaze steady. She lifted a huge log left over from construction, holding it like a sword. We can't let them get through, she said firmly, her voice booming like thunder. By her side came Anna, and where Alex's face was serious, Anna's glowed with a dangerous joy. She looked out over the horde, her eyes sparkling. So many. It's perfect, she murmured, her lips curling into a smile. She stepped forward, boom, and crushed the first zombies under her heel. A shiver of delight ran through her, and she laughed aloud. They're so small. Like insects. With a glint in her eyes, she lifted her foot again, this time slowly slipping off her shoe and tossing it aside, making the earth tremble. Then the other. She pressed her bare foot to the ground, wiggling her toes and sighing, as if savouring something delicious. That's better. Now I can really feel them. And without hesitation, she stepped down into another cluster of skeletons, bones crunching like dry twigs, while Anna laughed like a child with her favourite toy. Alex turned her head, her eyes filled with worry. Anna, this isn't a game. They can kill us if we're not careful. But Anna barely heard her. She was absorbed, stomping forward, her laughter mixing with the screams of monsters. For Alex, it was different. She swung the log with discipline, crushing enemies in a steady rhythm. Every move was focused, every gesture serious. She wanted to protect the village, not play with its enemies. From the wall, Steve and the others watched as the battle raged back and forth. They're mighty, panted one of the warriors. But look at Anna. She's enjoying this? Steve said nothing, but his eyes darkened. He could see it too. And even though Anna was fighting on their side, he couldn't help but fear what her delight in battle truly meant. The monsters kept coming, wave after endless wave, and the sun, which should have been their salvation, did nothing. Something, or someone, had twisted the rules of the world. And now, two giants stood at the centre of it all, one caught in euphoria, the other in duty. Chapter 13. When battle turns to play, the battle raged on. Smoke and dust filled the air as zombies and skeletons surged forward in waves. The village warriors fought bravely at the gate, but it was clear to all. It was the two giants who held the monsters back. Alex swung her huge log like a sword, precise and controlled. Every movement was efficient. She shattered skeletons, crushed zombie heads, and kicked creepers away before they could explode near the village. Beside her, Anna's laughter rang out. She grabbed a pair of skeletons in her hands, their bones rattling as they kicked and struck at her fingers. Anna grinned, lifted them to her face, and let them fall into her mouth. Crunch! Crunch! She swallowed them down with a satisfied sigh. They actually taste better than they look, she said loudly, laughing. The villagers gasped. Steve stared up at her in shock, but Anna didn't notice. She scooped up another handful of zombies, squeezed them together like a ball of wet clay, and tossed them aside, sending them crashing in a cloud of dust. "See, Alex! This is fun!" she shouted, her eyes shining like a child who had discovered a new game. Alex froze for a moment, her gaze sharp on Anna. "Anna, this isn't a game. They're trying to wipe us out. If you just mess around, you're putting everyone in danger." But Anna just laughed, blushing a little as if Alex's scolding was a loving tease, and answered in a mock-offended tone, "Oh, come on, Alex. Can't you see? Nothing can hurt us now. We're giants. We could stomp on them all day and they couldn't do a thing." To prove her point, she set her foot down. Boom! Crushing a whole group of zombies and spiders that had surged forward in a tight cluster. The ground shook, monster screams died away, and dust billowed up in a cloud. Anna smiled triumphantly, blood and dust clinging to her bare feet. Alex looked at her, her heart heavy. She knew Anna was enjoying this far too much. Her friend no longer saw the monsters as a threat, but as toys. And for the first time, Alex asked herself, is this a gift or a curse? Chapter 14. When Help Becomes Dangerous. The battle surged back and forth, but suddenly cries rang out from the village walls. "A big group coming! They're heading for the gate!" "We can't hold them much longer! Help!" The voices were desperate, panicked. Anna turned quickly. Her eyes lit up, as if she'd been waiting for something like this. "Ha! I'll take care of it!" she shouted, and without thinking, she charged toward them a gate. Her massive strides made the ground quake, houses shudder. "Anna, wait!" shouted Alex, but she was already gone. At the gate, the warriors were forming a defensive line, but when Anna barreled in, their formation shattered like glass. Boom! She stomped right into a group of zombies, but also into a few of the village's own defenders, who were tossed aside like dolls. Shields and spears flew through the air as men and women shouted in shock. "Anna, watch out!" one of them screamed, but she didn't hear. She laughed loudly, raised both arms, and swept a wave of skeletons aside, smashing them against the village walls. "Did you see that? I'm helping. I'm killing them all." But in her euphoria, she toppled another tower of sandbags and stepped so close to the gate that the wood splintered under her weight. Steve saw it happening from the middle of the village. His eyes widened, and he shouted with all his might, "Alex, you have to stop her. She's destroying the village." Alex turned her head and saw Anna in full ecstasy, her huge body dancing through enemies and allies without knowing the difference. The warriors shouted, trying to get her to pull back, but she only smiled, almost blind with joy. "I'm just doing my best," she shouted happily. "Look how many I can crush at once." She stomped again, crash, and the ground in front of the gate turned into a muddy mass of blood and bones. But for every zombie she crushed, she also took the wall and the village's hope one step closer to collapse. Alex's hands tightened around the log in her grip. She knew that if she didn't act soon, Anna might do more harm than the horde itself. Chapter 15. When friends collide, dust hung thick over the village. The shouts of warriors mingled with the moans of monsters, but everything was drowned out by Anna, laughing loudly as she stomped zombies into the mud. Each movement sent tremors through the earth, and the wooden gate creaked under her weight. "I've got this under control," she shouted triumphantly, grabbing a pair of skeletons and tossing them aside like twigs. But from the wall, Alex could see how the warriors were being pushed back by Anna's huge movements, how sandbags and barricades were splintered. She saw children and women fleeing from the stones and planks Anna was unknowingly sending flying. Alex took a deep breath, straightened her back, and stepped forward. "Anna, stop! You're hurting the village. You're hurting our people." Anna turned, her face flushed and sweaty, but still smiling. "No, Alex, you don't get it. I've got this. Just watch." She slammed her foot down. Boom! And a whole group of zombies was obliterated. But the shockwave also sent a few warriors tumbling, their swords and shields flying from their hands. Alex stepped even closer, her voice sharper now. "You can't call it control when innocent people are getting hurt. Stop, Anna." Something in her tone made Anna's smile freeze. She looked at Alex, her best friend, her childhood companion, and for the first time, it didn't feel like support, but like criticism, like judgment. You're ruining the fun," Anna muttered, her gaze darkening. Alex reached out, trying again to hold her back. "This isn't fun, Anna. This is serious." But that touch made something snap inside her. Anna jerked her arm away, and in a sudden movement, she struck out at Alex. "Craash." The blow hit Alex on the shoulder, sending her reeling back, crashing through a couple of rooftops so people had to scream and run from the falling beams. "Alex!" shouted Steve, who dove aside to avoid the dust and debris. Anna stood there, breathing heavily, her face angry. "You don't understand. I'm doing this for us, for the village. I'm saving us. Why can't you just let me be?" But her words were drowned out by the sound of people fleeing the battlefield, now afraid not just of the monsters, but of the giant standing before them. Chapter 16. When friends become foes. The dust still hung in the air as Alex slowly rose from the ruins of the collapsed houses. She brushed rubble from her shoulders, her eyes burning with both pain and determination. She took a step forward, and the ground shook beneath her bare feet. She pointed at Anna, her voice booming through the whole village. "That's enough, Anna. You have to stop." Anna froze, her hands clenched into fists. "Stop! I'm saving us. I'm crushing more monsters than any of you. It's you, Alex, who doesn't understand." "Saving us?" Alex's gaze turned dark. "Look around. Look at the houses. Look at the people. They're running from you, not from the monsters." The words struck like a whip. Anna gritted her teeth, her cheeks burning red. "You! Always so perfect. Always the smart one, the responsible one. Maybe you just can't stand that I'm finally stronger than you." Before Alex could answer, Anna lunged forward, their bodies colliding with a deafening crash. Wood and stone were crushed beneath their weight, while the monsters beneath them were pulverized, trampled flat like insects in the chaos. Steve ran through the dust, his heart pounding. Everywhere people screamed as they tried to escape the battlefield where two giants crashed into each other. He dove between falling beams, helping a mother and her child out of a house on the verge of collapse. "Get out of the village!" he shouted, but his eyes were always fixed on Alex and Anna. He watched as they rolled across the marketplace, striking at each other, their shadows covering the whole square. Underneath them, zombies and skeletons were crushed by the dozens, but it didn't matter, because now the greatest threat was the giants themselves. "Stop it, both of you!" Steve screamed, his voice hoarse, but it was nearly drowned out by the thunder of their struggle. He rushed forward, daring to step out among their feet as the earth shook with every blow. Alex heard him. She hurled Anna off and stood over him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "Steve, it's not me!" "It's Anna. She refuses to stop." Anna stared at them both, her gaze dark and furious. Those words cut deeper than any blow could. She clenched her fists, her whole body shaking. You're blaming me? Always me, as if I'm a child who doesn't understand anything." She screamed, and in a furious burst, she hurled herself at Alex again, this time with even greater force. Alex raised her arms to block, and the whole earth trembled, as if the world itself held its breath. Chapter 17. When the Truth Strikes. The blows thundered through the earth. Alex and Anna crashed into each other again and again, their massive bodies colliding like rolling thunder. Alex kept holding back, her attacks more defense than offense. Her eyes were full of sorrow, not hate. "Anna, why are you doing this?" "Why are you so angry?" she cried, blocking another wild blow. But Anna didn't answer. Her eyes were dark, her cheeks flushed with both rage and euphoria. She hurled herself forward again, and their bodies toppled through trees and fields, until even the monsters that had been marching toward the village began to flee in panic. They're running away," whispered a warrior from the wall, astonished. "Even the monsters don't dare get close to them." Amidst the chaos, Steve fought his way forward. He ran between toppled fences and shattered market stalls, desperately trying to find a path through the tremors. "Alex! Anna! Stop! You're destroying everything!" he yelled, but his voice was swallowed by the thunder of the giants' fight. He got too close. Far too close. Anna stepped forward with an angry scream, her bare foot slamming into the earth, and there, right beneath her, stood Steve. "No!" Alex saw it happen. Without thinking, she lunged forward, grabbed Anna's ankle with all her strength, and yanked. At that same moment, Anna's foot hit the ground. Not hard, but enough to knock the air from Steve. He disappeared in the dust beneath the enormous shadow. Anna lost her balance, tumbled backward, and crashed to the ground with a thud that sent tremors through the whole forest. Silence. Alex now stood with Steve in her hands. His body was limp, his eyes closed. She held her breath, gently checking. There was a faint heartbeat. He was alive. She looked up at Anna, her voice shaking with anger and fear. "Anna, you almost killed him." Anna sat, still sprawled on the ground, her hair covering her face. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Only when the tears began to fall did she find her voice. I didn't mean to. I didn't see him. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." She looked around, at the toppled houses, at the shattered barricades, at the wounded warriors lying in the mud, and at Alex standing as a shining mirror of everything Anna felt she should have been. For the first time since she had grown, Anna truly saw what she had done. She got up, unsteady, took one last look at Alex, at Steve in her hands, and without a word, she ran. Her enormous footsteps thundered through the forest, trees falling behind her as she vanished into the darkness. Alex stood back, holding Steve tight against her chest, while the entire village looked on. The silence was heavy. No one said a word. Chapter 18. A Split Heart. Anna ran. Her enormous body crashed through the forest, every step sending tremors through the earth. Trees snapped beneath her feet, branches tore at her skin, but she hardly felt it. She ran because she couldn't do anything else. Tears blurred her vision, but they didn't stop. They dripped onto the earth, as big as raindrops, leaving dark spots in the ground. She ran until her legs trembled, and finally she stumbled into a clearing. There she fell to her knees, her hands sinking into the soil, and a cry tore itself from her throat. "Why?" The sound echoed through the trees, birds flying in panic from their nests. She collapsed, curling up on her side, and the sobs came in waves. Everything she had wished for, everything she had dreamed of, had finally become hers. The strength, the height, the freedom, the feeling of being mighty, invincible. She had loved every second, but at the same time, she hated it. She hated that she had lost control, hated that her hands, which she thought could protect, had destroyed houses, that her feet, which she thought could crush enemies, had nearly taken Steve's life. She lay a long time in the grass, clutching her own hair, shaking. "I'm split in two," she whispered. "I love it. I hate it. Who am I?" And for the first time, Anna didn't feel like a giant. She felt small, smaller than ever. In the village, Alex slowly returned. She walked through the ruined streets, holding Steve gently to her chest. His body was still limp, but he was breathing. "He's here." "Quickly, help her," cried one of the women as she saw Alex. Several women rushed forward, took Steve in their arms, carried him into a house where lights were quickly lit and where they began to clean his wounds and make sure he was still breathing steadily. Alex stood outside the house. She was covered in dust, her hair tangled, her shoulders heavy. She looked out over the crowd. Many still stared at her, some with fear, others with hope. Then one of the elders stepped forward. A man with grey hair and deep wrinkles, his cane tapping against the ground as he approached. He looked up at her, his eyes serious but not hostile. "Alex," he said. And though his voice was calm, there was a nervous tremor in it. "I want to speak with you. Not here. Not in front of the others. But in private. About Anna. About why she did this." Alex took a deep breath, her gaze drifting toward the forest where Anna had disappeared. She could almost still hear those heavy steps, those distant cries. She knew her friend was lost out there. She nodded slowly. "I understand. I will talk to you." But in her heart, the question burned. Could Anna ever come back? And if she did, would the village ever forgive her? Chapter 19. Shadow of the Past. When calm finally settled over the village, Alex sat at the edge of the square. She felt tired, heavy in her body, though her strength still burned beneath her skin. Inside the nearby house, Steve was being tended by the women. She could hear muted voices, the sound of water and cloth being wrung out. She hadn't seen Anna since she ran into the forest. Only the distant sound of her footsteps, echoing in the darkness, still lingered in Alex's ears. "Alex," came a voice behind her. She turned and saw the old man. His grey hair was streaked with dust, his cane trembled lightly in his hand, but his eyes were clear. He nodded to her. "Will you walk with me for a moment? We must talk about Anna, without the others." Alex hesitated, but stood up and followed him. They walked slowly through the quiet streets until they reached a small storage house, its door ajar. Inside it was cool and dim. The old man sat heavily on a bench and gestured for her to sit on the ground in front of him. She folded her hands, as solemn as a child before a teacher. "You must understand, Alex," he began slowly. "Anna's anger, her dreams, they didn't begin today. They started 13 years ago." Alex frowned. 13 years? He nodded. She was 7 then. Just a little girl. It was a night like any other, but the zombies came from the forest, a horde bigger than anyone had ever seen. Her parents hid her in a shed behind the house, but they themselves were torn away while she watched through the cracks in the wall. Alex gasped, a hand rising to her chest. She could almost see it. A small girl, shaking as torchlight danced over dark shadows. I found her the next morning, the old man continued. She was completely still. She didn't cry, not a sound. She just looked me in the eyes, and I could see something had broken. I took her in, cared for her as best I could. But the grief, it never left. She carried it like a stone in her heart. He leaned forward, his voice lower now. She grew up with one dream, Alex. To become strong enough that it could never happen again. That she'd never have to watch anyone die in front of her, powerless to help. She never told any of you. She didn't want to appear weak. Alex's eyes grew wet. She looked down, her fingers digging into the earth. And when we came to the village, the old man nodded. She found a light. She looked at you, Alex. She looked at Steve. And she smiled for the first time in years. She looked up to you, especially to you, like the big sister she never had. But inside her, the old dream remained. And when the crystal came, it made that wish reality. She couldn't resist. Alex sat in silence for a long time. Her heart ached. She remembered Anna's laughter, her joy, her jealousy, her anger. And now she understood. It wasn't just a game. It was a child who had carried a burden for far too long. She's split in two, Alex whispered. The Anna who loves us and the village, and the Anna who never stopped dreaming of strength. The old man nodded heavily. Exactly. And if we don't find her, if we don't help her heal, I fear the dark side will take her completely. Alex looked out toward the forest, where darkness had swallowed her friend. She took a deep breath, determination in her eyes. Then we must find her. And I won't give up. She's still my best friend. Chapter 20. Temptation in Small Hands. The sun hung low, and the village was quiet after the chaotic days. Children played in the meadow, their laughter mixing with the sound of birds in the evening woods. But a little distance away, behind a fence of wooden posts, something lay that didn't belong. Little Lila had found the box. It had been toppled during the fighting, and cracks in the lid glowed faintly. She knew what the grown-ups had said. Never touch it. But the light drew her in, as if it whispered her name. She crouched down, peering through the crack. Inside lay the crystal, warm and alive. And then the thought came. Soft but irresistible. If I had it, I could be big too. I could play giant with the other children. I could protect them. I could be special. She lifted her hand, hesitantly, her fingers trembling, but they crept closer and closer to the lid. Stop. The voice was quiet, but filled with strength. Lila looked up, and there was Alex. The enormous figure towered over her, but her eyes were gentle. The girl blushed, dropped her hand and whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't want to make you angry. Alex knelt down, her massive shadow covering the girl. She reached out a finger, gentle as a caress. I'm not angry, Lila. I know how it feels. It whispers. It tries to tempt you. But we can't give in. Not again. Lila bit her lip, tears welling up. But I could feel something. Like it was talking to me. Alex nodded slowly. She gave a small, sad smile, but her voice remained serious. It was brave of you to tell me. You're strong, Lila. Stronger than you think. Remember that. The girl's eyes lit up with pride at those words. She smiled, wiped her cheeks with her sleeve, and ran back to the other children, calling to her from the meadow. Alex stayed alone with the box. She stared at the crack, where the light pulsed, and she felt it even now. A warmth, a voice deep in her mind. You could be more. You could be stronger. You could protect them all, if you just set me free. She shook her head, pressing her fingers to her temples. No, I'm not yours. I won't be yours. She turned and called out to a couple of men nearby. We need to get it away. Put it in a new box, lock it tight, and make sure no children can get close to it. The men hurried off for planks and rope, while Alex stood staring at the faint glow. She now knew the crystal was no mere stone. It was alive. It hunted for weak points in the heart, dreams, desires, fears, and turned them into reality. She took a deep breath, but in her mind the whisper lingered. One day, you'll be mine too. Chapter 21. Friends in the Dark. Alex stood in the middle of the square, surrounded by villagers still repairing the damage left by the battle. The box with the crystal had been closed again, but its faint light still burned through the cracks. She turned toward the crowd, her voice resounding but full of calm. Now we know why Anna lost control. It wasn't just her. It was the crystal. It amplifies dreams, desires, and it hits hardest those who've always wished to be giants. People stared at her, some nodding slowly, others still skeptical. But when Alex met their eyes, she continued, I promise you, I'll return. I'll help you rebuild the village. But first, I have to find her. She's still one of us. She's still my friend. An elderly woman stepped forward and laid a hand on Alex's foot. Go, Alex. Find her. And bring her home. The sun was setting as Alex left the village. Her footsteps echoed across the fields as she followed the trail of toppled trees Anna had left behind. Soon, darkness covered the forest, the torches' glow from the village fading behind her. She went deeper, her breath calm but heavy. Then, a sound. Faint, hidden among the trees' echoes. Crying. Alex stopped, listened. Then she followed the sound, stepping carefully until she reached a clearing. There, in the grass, sat Anna. She had her knees drawn up to her chest, face hidden in her hands. Her shoulders shook, each sob rumbling like thunder in the quiet night. Anna, Alex said softly. Anna froze, looked up. Her eyes were red, tears still running down her cheeks. Alex, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I almost killed Steve. I destroyed houses. I played with something that wasn't a game. She broke down again, hiding her face in her hands. Alex sat down in front of her, so the two giants sat close, their shadows intertwined in the moonlight. She reached out her arms, wrapped them around Anna, and pulled her into a hug. I know, she said quietly. I saw it all. But I also saw you, Anna. I saw your pain. I saw your dream. And I know you're not evil. You're my best friend. No matter what. Anna looked up at her, her gaze uncertain. But how can you still see me that way? After everything I've done? Alex smiled softly, but her voice was strong. Because I know your heart. I know you didn't want to hurt Steve. I know you didn't want to destroy the village. The crystal tried to take you, and you fought. But you fell. That could happen to anyone. It doesn't change who you are to me. Anna sniffled, more tears falling, but this time there was also a small smile beneath them. She rested her forehead on Alex's shoulder. I promise I'll never let it happen again. I'll fight that feeling, no matter what. Alex held her close. And I promise to stand by your side. We'll do this together. They sat like that for a long time, quiet in the darkness of the forest. Two giants, but also two friends, united by both guilt and hope. Chapter 22. Fire over the village. The two giants rose from the clearing. Anna wiped her eyes, her cheeks still red, but her steps were firmer now as she followed Alex through the forest. They didn't say much. The words from their conversation still hung heavy in the air, but there was a new strength between them. Let's go home. Alex said quietly. It's time. Anna nodded. Together. They walked side by side under the moonlight, their steps echoing in unison. But as they emerged from the forest and saw the village, they both froze. In the distance, the sky was glowing, orange and red. Smoke twisted up toward the stars. Flames danced on rooftops. No, Anna whispered. Alex's eyes widened. The fire! The village is burning! They started to run, as fast as their enormous bodies allowed, hearts pounding. The sounds of burning wood and screams grew louder as they got closer. When they reached the village, chaos was everywhere. Houses were ablaze, women and children ran screaming through the streets, and warriors fought frantically against a new wave of monsters. Zombies, skeletons, and spiders surged forward. But something was different. They were more organized, as if driven by a dark will. They've come back, Alex said, her voice shaking. Anna clenched her fists, her eyes shining. Then this ends now. The two giants hurled themselves into the fight. Alex grabbed a fallen beam and knocked 3 zombies to the ground with one swing. Anna stomped hard, her bare, feet sending whole groups crashing down, her voice echoing, not with joy, but with pure defiance. Get away from my village, she shouted. The village warriors cried out in relief when they saw the two giants fighting side by side. They're together. We have a chance. But then Alex saw something that made her blood run cold. Up ahead, in the middle of a swarm of zombies, something heavy was being dragged through the streets. A box. The crystal. A group of zombies had gotten hold of it. Their dead fingers scratched at the lid, trying to pry it open, while it glowed brighter and brighter, as if responding to their touch. No! Alex shouted. They have the crystal! Anna froze, her eyes filling with fear and rage. If they open it... Alex nodded. Then we're all lost. They charged at full speed toward the monsters, their massive shadows flickering through the flames as the battle for the crystal began. Chapter 23. The crystal's end. Flames cast shadows across the walls as the zombies dragged the box through the streets. Every time their dead fingers scratched the lid, the crystal answered with a brighter light, a pulsing heart of colours. Alex and Anna charged forward. Their steps were like earthquakes, and every second felt too late. They're about to open it, Anna shouted, eyes wide with fear. Then we stop them now, Alex replied. They plunged into the horde. Anna trampled dozens of zombies with every step, bones shattering and bloody remains scattering over the cobblestones. Alex swung a fallen beam, smashing skeletons to dust. But the monsters clung to the box. Their eyes glowed with the same light, as if the crystal itself was pulling them. A crack split the lid. Light burst out, casting long shadows over the houses. Alex! Screamed Steve, stumbling out from a house, still weak but awake. They're about to set it free. Alex threw the beam aside, her gaze locked on the box. She lifted her hand toward Anna. Keep them away from me. Anna hesitated for a second, then nodded, and with a roar threw herself at the last groups of monsters rushing forward. Alex stepped up, slammed her foot onto the box. The crystal thumped inside, the light blinding her, and a voice echoed in her mind. Set me free. You will be mightier than ever. You can save them all. You can be more than human. She clenched her teeth, tears pressing to her eyes. No, I am enough as I am. She bent down, grabbed a massive stone from the ruins, and lifted it above her head. With a roar filled with both fear and resolve, she hurled it down. Crash! The light exploded. A thunderous boom shook the whole town. Gusts of wind blew the flames back, and zombies collapsed screaming, as if something invisible had torn the life from them. When the dust settled, the box was shattered into splinters. The crystal, the dangerous, tempting crystal, was reduced to 1,000 pieces, glinting like glass in the gravel. Anna stood behind her, covered in blood and dust. She stared at the remains, her eyes full of both relief and fear. You destroyed it. Alex panted, turning to her. It was the only way. It can never take any of us again. The villagers began to gather, wounded but alive. Some looked at Alex and Anna with gratitude, others still with unease. But one thing was certain. The threat was gone. Chapter 24. When the Shadow Awakens. After the battle, only ruins and silence remained. The villagers set to work immediately, gathering planks, putting out small fires, covering the wounded with blankets. Alex and Anna, both exhausted, helped where they could, but their enormous bodies felt heavy and slow now. Steve, still weak but on his feet, looked up at them. Go rest. We'll take it from here. You've done enough for today. Alex nodded, her eyes heavy with fatigue. Anna hesitated for a moment, but followed. They lay down outside the village, in the meadow, side by side. The stars blinked overhead, and for the first time in days, the world felt quiet. Good night, Alex, Anna whispered, her voice small, almost childlike despite her giant form. Good night, Anna, Alex replied. They closed their eyes, and sleep took them quickly. But the night was not silent. Where the crystal's remains were scattered on the ground, a faint glow began to gather. At first, small sparks, like fireflies dancing in the darkness. Then they drifted through the air, slowly but surely, as if drawn together. While Alex and Anna slept, their bodies began to change. Their skin shimmered faintly, as if an invisible force was slipping away from them. They shrank slowly, centimetre by centimetre, until at last they lay in their normal human size, deep in. Sleep, unaware. The source of the magic had left them. Above the village square, the sparks danced, collecting into small shards of glass, pulling together, melting, becoming one. Soon there was a crystal again, whole, glowing, stronger than before. But this time, something new had appeared. A dark shadow glided across the ground, thin as mist but cold as night. It stretched, reached out like a hand, and when it touched the crystal, it closed around it. The light vanished. With a whispering sigh, both shadow and crystal slipped away, as if they had never been there. Only silence remained, and the sense that the battle was not over. It had only just begun. Chapter 25. A New Morning. The sun slowly rose behind the mountains, its first rays painting the sky gold and orange. Birds sang cautiously, as if trying to drown out the unease that still lingered in the air after the night's battle. Out in the meadow, outside the village, lay two figures. No longer giants, but people. Just Alex and Anna, as they had been before. Alex stirred first. She opened her eyes, stared up at the clear sky, and immediately felt the difference. Her body felt light, normal. She sat up, looked down at herself. Her hands were small again, her feet no longer large enough to crush stones with a step. I'm myself again, she whispered, and a relief she hardly dared believe washed through her. Beside her, Anna moved. She rubbed her eyes and slowly sat up. When she saw her hands, she gasped and held them close to her chest. I'm small again. Alex smiled softly. Not small. Just yourself. Anna laughed nervously, but her smile quickly faded. I don't know if I'm happy or sad. They got up and started walking back toward the village. Along the way, Anna felt her heart torn. Part of her was filled with immense relief, No more fear of hurting people with a single wrong step. No more laughter booming like thunder and scaring children. She could be normal again. Be with the others. But another part of her already missed the feeling. The freedom, the strength, seeing the world from above. She had loved it, even though it had led to chaos, and she was ashamed that she still wanted it. She bit her lip and looked down, but Alex placed a hand on her shoulder. Anna, you're still you, and I'm here. No matter what you feel, we'll get through it together. Anna looked at her, tears welling up again, but this time there was also a smile. She nodded. Thank you. I never would have made it without you. When they reached the village, people were already cleaning up. Smoke still rose from the burned houses, but the mood wasn't just dark. There was hope in the air. "They're normal again," called one of the women as she saw them approaching. Soon, people gathered around them, relieved but also curious. No one mentioned the crystal, not yet, but everyone's eyes showed a mix of fear, respect, and gratitude. Steve, still bandaged but standing, stepped forward. He looked at them both with a tired smile. "You're yourselves again. That's all that matters." Alex smiled back, and Anna looked down, embarrassed, but also relieved that he could still smile at her. Later, when the sun stood high, Alex and Anna sat together in the meadow again. They looked out over the village, where children played among the ruins, and adults built new walls. "It feels like the end of something," Alex said quietly. "Or the beginning of something new," Anna replied. She lay down in the grass and closed her eyes, trying to forget both the pain and the longing. Alex looked at her, then out toward the forest, and an uneasy thought nagged at her. She knew the crystal had been shattered, but why did it feel as if the battle wasn't over? She said nothing. Not yet. For now, there was peace. For now, they were just Alex and Anna again. Epilogue: The Hand of Shadow. Far from the village, deep in the darkest mountains where the sun never truly reached, a shadow moved silently across the ground. It carried something close, hidden in its dark grasp, the crystal, whole once more. It slid into a vast hall, lit by torches, where ranks of dark warriors waited. Their eyes glowed red in the gloom, armor black as night. They fell silent as the shadow entered, as if it carried something sacred. At the end of the hall stood a woman, beautiful, but with a beauty as cold and dangerous as ice. Her hair was long and dark, her eyes glinted like amber beneath the moonlight. A witch. She raised her hand, and the shadow obeyed at once. It offered up the crystal. The witch received it with grace, as if lifting an infant, and let her fingers run over the glowing surface. An evil smile curled her lips. "So, here you are at last," she said softly, her voice silky but full of power. "My tool, my weapon." She lifted her gaze to her warriors. "The world thinks the fight is over, but it has only just begun." The crystal pulsed in her hand, and the hall rang with the shouts of the dark warriors as the shadow disappeared.